Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's been almost a year since the last devlog, like 8 to 10 months, somewhere in that range. It's been a year. I was born in 1988, so that makes me a Year of the Dragon person, and I found out the hard way that when you are Year of the Dragon year, kind of sucks. It's a pretty bad year, so Slay Your Dragons was rather appropriate for 2024 for me. At least, however, I was able to do some art for Halloween and Christmas and the Chinese New Year piece this year, so that was pretty cool. Um, most of the year, though, was spent doing a lot of business and busy work. We traveled to Hong Kong for some business negotiations and talks, as well as some family stuff. So it was a pretty good trip. I was able to get a lot of footage and walk around and take some photos. Also experience some stuff I've never done before, like riding and eating lunch on one of the junk ships. That was really cool. If you're ever in Hong Kong, I highly recommend it. This time, though, I did get to do quite a bit of photography. Traveled around some of the areas I've not been to before as well, and just studied the environment for some projects that you'll be seeing a little bit. The main focus I have for right now is Death Harvest. Over the last year, haven't really done a lot. Ronaldo's been working hard on the stuff that we've asked him to work on, mostly the interaction system and some of the weapons and stuff like that, but because we're getting rid of our previous inventory system in lieu of a new one, not a lot has moved. He did finish our costume system, you can see here. We have some fun features just for right now that may or may not be in the final game. To be honest, though, that's really it. The Death Harvest is moving very slowly in the background because in order for me to keep up and make a good game, I actually needed to study a lot of stuff on my own because I kept getting hung up on major issues and things I couldn't resolve because I just didn't understand the program. And since we changed with our coder and all the other issues we had, and then in 2022, that one trailer, you know exactly which one I'm talking about, just derailed my game dev journey.
シュウ君、嘘ついてるよね。騙せてると思う？ひなこを。ひなこはね、死んだんだよ。ひなこ、いつまでここにいる気なの？
I did continue working on Project Office and even redesigned Haruka a little bit, and I will probably keep doing that over the next period of time, however long it's going to take. I was really depressed about that, actually, and I kind of kept it buttoned up, and it affected my ability to make games, I think. It was pretty difficult to get past because something I'd worked so hard on for so long took me like 2.5, almost 3 years to write that story and to do all the concepts, and we paid for character models and animations and all kinds of stuff that I kind of had to wait and see what Konami was doing with it. Luckily, it's pretty different, except in all the ways that it's not really different at all. But that's life. That's what happens. So I kind of went back to the drawing board and thought, our games, we're like culturally centered on Hong Kong. So what does Hong Kong horror do specifically? I started looking at a bunch of my favorite movies, one of which called The Imp. I hadn't seen this movie since probably college, and when I went back in and kind of rewatched it with Kay, the ideas kind of started flooding in. I knew that we could make something that was as moody and dark as, say, Silent Hill, and keep a very specific Hong Kong flair and work in the ideas of Cantonese and Chinese Taoism into something really unique and special. I just kind of needed a propellant. And oddly enough, after back in 2020, when I finished Sense 1, I had written down 6 game ideas. And one of those ideas took place in a mall and centered around a true murder mystery story of the Hello Kitty head. I'm sure some of you have heard of it. And then there was a surreal and creepy itch.io game jam that was a 30-day game jam. And I thought, well, the Imp has a through line there with my mall and their mall. And that's how Goodnight Pon Pon happened. During that 30 days, I had to work as fast as possible doing concepts for everything that I could, which was not much based on the time frame. And a lot of those concepts were very sloppy. And then I just started modeling and blueprinting and doing character modeling and rigging and everything that I hadn't really gotten very far on myself. With Sense 1, everything was easy because I drew it myself and then had our coder go in and make the stuff happen. You know, same thing with Midnight, where I modeled a lot of things on my own, but they weren't very great, obviously. So I wanted to step up. I wanted to level up. So everything that I did for Ponpon was effectively just a remake of Midnight. I wanted every feature that I had in Midnight to, generally, and to put that back into a game that I could kind of pull forward from and learn everything I needed to learn to keep making games. So you're seeing some really early footage of that. There's a mall in Hong Kong called Argyle Center. It's kind of dying, unfortunately. When we did get to go there at this last trip and compare it 1-to-1, because the trip was after I finished Ponpon, so it was really neat to make something based on my memory and then, you know, put it in the game. So the game comes out, it didn't do great. You know, you're selling something for a couple bucks and you had no wind up to it. So with feedback, I went in, added more stuff. I had to learn how to make new puzzles and everything like that. So it's really comforting to say that with with the exception of a handful of purchased assets, everything in this game I made myself. Or Kay made, like the giant pom-pom doll. But almost all of it was me. So then we took feedback, added costumes and stuff like that, and that's all in there now. So you can see all the new content I've added to try to, you know, make it as close to Midnight in terms of quality and quantity of content as possible. And now we have the bikini costume. The next thing I did, though, was try to learn physics, and I took probably way too much time learning physics and playing with the physics. Lots of physics, because we're not allowed to have those in AAA games anymore unless you're from, like, Asia, and technically we're half from Asia, so I did some physics stuff. So anyway, that's Good Night Pom-Pom. You should definitely go and buy it. It's on Steam right now. I think no, sale's over. But if you like Midnight, if you like Sense 1, I think this is low. It is my best game to date, and it's reviewed to prove that. So it's very cool. Another thing I did in Hong Kong was see a movie with Kay called Mall Possession Street. It was really weird because also, again, we put out Ponpon and then went to Hong Kong a couple months later. And this movie had a bunch of stuff that was very similar to Ponpon, but it just hit me real hard and I got really inspired. So the next step was to start figuring out what Ponpon 2 should be, because I knew there was always going to be a second part. I kind of knew that I wanted her to go into hell, and we needed a real hero's journey for Lily, and also a redemptive story for Carmen, our Ponpon. The Imp has an entire section where the guy does exactly that, and it was kind of this like light bulb moment. So I started looking at some of the photos I took in Hong Kong, and then also looked at some of the ones I took in Japan the year prior, and thinking about, okay, well, what have we always been missing from the Sense games, and what would I like to push more? And that's definitely like the Taoism aspect. And being that we're going to hell, I could just, do the Silent Hill thing and just do what everyone else, would think. Or I could really lean into Buddhist and Cantonese Taoist traditions and ideals. So I started kind of melding those things and concepting stuff out and really thinking hard about it. And then the Silent Hill 2 remake came out and got to play that. And I thought, okay, what kind of combat do we need? And I couldn't really place it. I didn't want guns, so... That's how I knew. I knew immediately that the game, being Hong Kong horror, we needed Kung Fu. It needed to be a character action game that leans really, really strong into fast, flexible, fun combat. Hong Kong horror movies, if they aren't focusing 100% on the comedy like Mr. Vampire, tend to lean into a thing where you don't run and hide from the ghosts, you deal with them. with magic, or you punch them in the face. Sometimes you punch them in the face with a magic fist or weapon. So that's the direction we're going. I've done a ton of studying on Taoism, and Pon 2 is a way for me to test how I want to handle all the combat. So that with Death Harvest, I get some of the crazy DMC style stuff out of my system and do something that's a little more honed and focused, that's a little more close to, I'd say, like Resi 4. I think we talked about that in the previous devlogs. But with Pon 2, again, I wanted to do something that's pretty different, but find a mesh of character action and survival horror. The Ninja Gaiden 4 trailer dropped recently, and as a huge fan of Ninja Gaiden, Team Ninja is my favorite developer, for those of you that didn't know that. I got really excited again, and more inspiration kind of hit, and I was like, this is it. This is the proper direction. I like Dark Souls and Bloodborne, but I'm really glad we're getting character action games that are skill-based and focused, and not built around, equipment and stats. The Onimusha trailer also came out, and that looks great. But it's a little bit slower than what I want for Pon. It looks good, it looks awesome, but it definitely is a different take, and it might be something really cool. So what do I want? I want fast-paced character action. That's definitely number one. I need an elemental defense system to mesh with the ideas of Taoism. I don't want it to be Souls-like, but I want it to be very punishing. Perfect dodges and guards, yeah, kind of, but no parry system. It's not Sekiro. So the other thing is, how do I mix survival horror pacing, the inventory system, and the strategy of that kind of game in with a character action game? And the answer is I just kind of started doing it. I went into Unreal, started setting up the weapons, started setting up a couple variations of the combat system. I went through it, no lie, 5 times. And every time it just never felt good enough. It never felt quite right. It was always, too clunky, buggy, broken. It felt like another Game Jam project, and that's just not what I was trying to do. The most important thing was to figure out how to make something that feels as good as Ninja Gaiden, but is also a survival horror title first and foremost. And I think the Elemental Bagua Mirror is the kind of like hinge of that, so I started building that out. And then this person dropped a Wudong sword animation set, which was like perfect timing because I could not find anything that was Chinese Kung Fu weapons. So it was like perfect timing. So I, of course, abandoned the Bagua Mirror and started focusing on this because I was like, oh, okay, well, this will be more fun. I can actually achieve, killing an enemy, and that's cool. So I went into the animation notify system, learned all about that, started, tinkering and building out a new system. I think that was like version 2. And then kind of hit roadblocks where just things weren't functioning the way I liked them. And as a Ninja Gaiden fan and guy who plays a lot of these kind of games, I know when it sucks, and it sucked. So I went back to the Bagua Mirror system. So in Taoism, there are 5 elements: earth, water, fire, metal, and wood. And they offset each other. So if an enemy has a strength of wood, you use fire to kill it, and vice versa. Or, well, not vice versa. Water would be against fire, right? So if you do some reading about Taoism, which I've had to do a lot, I'll distill that more in the game. I don't want to spoil anything or kind of take a lot of that wonder out the first time you play it. But I really wanted to focus on getting the deep Taoism aspects into the combat as a puzzle itself. So you'll have the combos, but then you'll also have to think about each encounter and each enemy on screen kind of individually. Whenever I would get frustrated with that, I would jump into something else like menus or, changing lighting or, re-rigging the character or, just anything I could do to feel like I accomplished something of value and no single day would go by that I didn't have a win of some kind. After last year, I kind of really needed this forward momentum, and Pon's good reviews were great. That really helped. But I now wanted to feel like I was good at developing games as a solo dev in Unreal. So each clip you're seeing right now is a different day. So it might not look like there's a lot of forward progress, but every morning I would get in and play a bunch around and go, okay, this is not working right. This isn't what I want. This isn't good enough. Even down to doing things like finally having an interaction system with dialogue that can do cool things and I can localize it. So I've made a ton of progress just on like little tiny stuff, but they all mount up. Pon 2 is going to be a much better, much more polished game, and I'm still only making it in like 6 or 7 months, maybe about a year, 10 months. So, but core dev, doing all the modeling, all that stuff, that will be 6 or 7 months. So I think the best thing I could do is give you guys like a clip of kind of the completed to as of tonight when I'm recording this audio, which is I'm putting the video out tomorrow on Patreon, so it's pretty quick. Like a minute and a half of focused footage. I had Nigel, the guy who did our music for some of the music for Sense 1. He did the Sisters theme song at the end, and he did all the music for Midnight. He composed some new music for Pon 2, and I'm also going to go ahead and reveal the title of the game, and then I'll go over that and what it means. So enjoy. So Pon 2 is officially titled Surangama, and Surangama is the title of a set of Buddhist sutras, or you can call it the Surangama Sutras, which roughly translates from the Chinese into heroic journey. And that is something that kind of like really like hung on to me. And even though I'm a Christian and I'm pretty proud of my faith, I also find a lot of inspiration and beauty in other religions, particularly Buddhism. So there's a lot of stuff I can't give away because it would like ruin the point of the game. But I am handling that aspect, that cultural aspect, unlike some Canadian and French studios, with a lot of reverence and respect and love. I did read through the sutras over the past couple months and found them to be rather profound and pretty beautiful. So this is a story about a young woman journeying into hell, except she's not dead, and why she's doing it, why she's going to be there. It's not like Silent Hill. You might find comparisons, but this is going to be something a little more on the religious end, as opposed to like a like psychological horror. I really wanted to focus on the hero's journey and what that means, especially for a character that it's just 2 small games, and this is also something that is going to build towards the Sense projects going forward, and then on a technical aspect, just help me make Death Harvest a really good game too. So yeah, Surangama is a kind of a meaningful project for me, but also I hope that people that play it will gain a lot from it. I've spent the better part of the last year writing this story, because I kind of was working on it before even the game jam with Pun Pun 1. It was meant to be it was meant to be part of the Sense 1, character May. It was supposed to be a little bit a piece of hers, and then I came up with something better for her and wanted to use this still because I think it's very strong and meaningful. So thank you all for listening to my rambling. Thank you for subscribing and liking and all the YouTube stuff. Check out my Patreon. It would be huge help. And make sure you're following on Twitter. I am not going to be on Blue Sky because ew. But yeah, thank you guys, and I will try to be better about making update videos. Talk to you soon. Bye.